Hi, and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's top 10 ending credit scenes for Game of Thrones. So this video is where I look at not just the endings of each episode of Game of Thrones, but how it transitions to the credits and how the music is used to enhance the effect of the ending. Now, this may seem like a trivial or silly subject to cover, however, I feel that in films the ending credits are not just that thing at the end of the film, but is part of the film, and I love when films take advantage of that to enhance the power of the ending. Although Game of Thrones is a TV show, it is a very cinematic one, and unlike most TV shows, it doesn't have a uniform theme song that plays at the end of every episode, and the credits just don't flash by really fast. So, some of its endings were downright cinematic and left me entranced with how well they pulled it off. If the ending of an episode has me glued to my chair, unable to move a muscle during the credit sequence, then I'm totally impressed, so I want to recognize the episodes I think pulled this off best. Again, I won't just be looking at the ending scene. This countdown would be a very different one if I were. Instead, I'll be focused on how the ending transitions to the credits, including the music used in the credits that help enhance the power of the ending. But before I get to my top 10, let me quickly recognize some honorable mentions. So now on to my top 10, starting with my number 10, Jaime loses a hand, Walk of Punishment.
You're nothing without your daddy. Your daddy ain't here. Never forget that. Here, this should help you remember. There was a bear up there.
Now, I've actually heard a lot of people complaining about this one for its use of a modern day punk rock song in a medieval setting like Game of Thrones. Many found it jarring and out of place, but me, I loved it and thought it worked beautifully. First off, this song is a punk version of The Bear and the Maiden Fair, the song Locke's men were singing earlier in the episode. Secondly, what I love most about it is the contrast, because it's a happy tone and the horror of Jaime losing his hand. One of my favorite uses of the ending credits is when music can contrast the tone of the ending, but in such a way that changes the tone of the music. As even though outwardly it's a very happy, very cheery tune, in the context of this ending it takes a more twisted meaning and sort of adds to the feeling of, wow, that was fucked up. Plus, that was such a shocking ending, and how jarring that song was, in my opinion, just adds to the shock value of the ending. Number 9 is The Red Wedding, The Reigns of Castamere. It was a bold choice to have the ending credit sequence with no music, and typically it's a choice I would disagree with and find pretentious. However, it really worked for this episode, as nothing is as intense and unexpected as the Red Wedding, that people would still be reaming with what they just saw with the jaw on the ground. It's actually more effective to leave them in silence. It actually adds to the eeriness of what they just witnessed, making this ending even more powerful. Number 8 is The Burning of Craster's Keep, first of his name. Now, this isn't one of my favorite episodes. In fact, in my top 10 video, I declared it my least favorite episode, and I wasn't that big of a fan of the Craster's Keep storyline. However, I found this ending to be really effective. In fact, this is the ending that inspired me to make this video, as although it isn't my number 1, it's always the first ending that comes to mind, mainly for the music, which I love, and I think totally enhances what just occurred at Craster's Keep. They could have went for something dreary or melancholy, but instead they went more lively and almost upbeat that sort of celebrated Jon Snow's victory over the mutineers, while at the same time having a hint of sorrow for what had just occurred there. I just thought it was perfect. Number 7 is Arya and the Hound defeat the Lannister soldiers, 2 swords. This was another ending that was immensely powerful, and one of my favorite scenes where the Hound and Arya confront the Lannister soldiers at the end. It was such an intense scene with such a brutal ending, with Arya taking sadistic delight in killing Pulliver. And then having Arya and the Hound ride off happily, Arya with her new horse and the Hound with his chicken, as they ride off over a background of burning fields to a very cheery and happy version of the Game of Thrones theme. It was just so awesome. There's so many conflicting tones in there that managed to work together to paint an awe-stricken picture that only enhanced how awesome that scene was. Where you have triumphant music playing with Arya and the Hound celebrating after brutally killing a bunch of guys while riding off to a background full of destruction and chaos. It was just so awesome. Number 6 is The Birth of the Dragons, Fire and Blood. I think I would describe this as the most magical ending Game of Thrones has ever had, as at least when I first saw this I was totally shocked that not only did Daenerys survive the fire, but birthed 3 dragons which we were told repeatedly had been extinct for centuries. Again, this was a huge what the fuck moment that had your jaw on the floor, but it was a more triumphant one, and the music reflected this by really raising the awe-inspiring feeling of it. Plus, having that screech of the dragon transition into credits was awesome, and as you'll soon see, is a device I always love. Number 5 is the Night King's Stare Down, Hard Home. After this intense battle with loud music, yelling, things exploding, weight screaming, you get this very quiet, very eerie moment with the Night King lifting his arms to raise the dead while staring at Jon with a challenge while he slowly rides off on the boat. Then it cuts to this wide shot and all you can hear is the sound of the wind, and it's so damn creepy. It works so good. And similar to the Reigns of Castamere, it hangs in silence for a bit just to let that moment sink in, but then slowly brings up this creepy White Walker music which slowly builds, and that was just so effective in helping you process all the madness you just saw with this long, quiet, eerie moment, and it was just done so well. Number 4 is Joffrey Dies, The Lion and the Rose.
You did this. He poisoned my son. Your king. Take him. Take him! Take him! Take him!
Another example of a great, intense ending where fans finally get the death they've been dying to see, and it was pulled off in such a brilliant manner with Cersei screaming to take Tyrion away, and the music building, and then it cuts to the credits with Sugal Ross's version of The Reigns of Castamere, which is the eeriest version of that song you'd ever want to hear. It added a great sense of foreboding to the madness. Not to mention, I think this was the best cover of this song. It's great they had the band playing this song earlier in the episode, and Joffrey was treating them like shit, and then this is the song you hear after his death, adding to the sense of justice that Joffrey got what he deserved. Such an intense way to end an episode. Number 3 is Daenerys Goes for a Ride, The Dance of Dragons. Another one of my favorite scenes of the series. It was such an intense action sequence that ended with an iconic moment of Daenerys riding her dragon for the first time, and it was such an interesting choice to focus on Tyrion at the end, because this was his moment of wonder. This is when he realized how special Daenerys is, and like the audience, he was completely awestruck by what he just saw. And then of course we close to the credits with the sound of the dragon screeching, which I always love, and the music encapsulates the intenseness of the scene we just witnessed, while at the same time leaving one with a sense of wonder. It was the perfect ending to an amazing sequence. Number 2 is Tywin wins the Battle of Blackwater, Blackwater.
I will keep you safe. My love. I promise you.
The battle is over. We have won.
And who are you? The proud Lord said that I must bow so low. Only a cat of a different coat. That's all the truth I know.
The ending sequence with Cersei's voiceover as the battle seems to be going to shit for everyone was one of my favorite from the entire series. It was so powerful, and when Tywin burst through the doors declaring they won the battle, you just want to get up and cheer, and then you remember that, wait a second, these are the Lannisters, and am I really happy they won? And then it cuts to the Nationals version of The Reigns of Castamere, which was a low-key version that emphasizes the vocals, that had the right blend of celebrating the Lannister victory, but also the dark tone of how twisted the Lannisters are that make you second-guess being happy they won. It was such an amazing ending. And my number 1 ending credit sequence for Game of Thrones is Daenerys gets an army, and now his watch has ended. course, I would choose a dragging, screeching ending for my number one, but for me, this will always be the most epic ending of Game of Thrones has ever had. I mean, this scene was just so badass when Daenerys uses her new army she just bought and her dragon to torch the masters and free the slaves, and then seeing the Unsullied pound their staffs in support of her, and then that master shot of seeing the huge army she just got marching off with these dragons flying overhead. It was just so amazing. I do believe I literally was out of my chair cheering when I first saw this episode, and this was one of those endings I wanted to watch again and again. And then the credits begin with this enthralling sound of the repeated music being played during Dany's conquest just enhanced how exciting all this was and made you so happy that you had the wisdom to keep watching this show, and it promised more awesomeness to come. All that and more makes this my number one favorite ending credit sequence in Game of Thrones. So that's it for my top 10 ending credit scenes for Game of Thrones. Be sure to check out my channel for many other Game of Thrones videos, including a weekly series of Season 6 prediction videos where I give my predictions for what I think will happen in Season 6, focusing on a different character each week. And make sure you subscribe so you can keep up with all that. And thanks a lot for watching.